We are here again for yet another podcast. I am super thrilled to have Allison Rothstein with me. She's here with Recovered Hearts. But before we begin, I want to make sure to give you guys our disclosure. This podcast is just based on our tips, our advice, our suggestions, and our opinions built upon most likely our experience, our education, and training. We are not doctors, licensed nutritionists, or dietitians. But Allison, I read on your Facebook page what you're all about, what you're passionate about, and I was like, I've got to connect with you and do a podcast. So let us know more about you.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I was very honored to be asked to be on here, so I appreciate it. So Recovered Hearts, I founded it because I just felt like I needed to bring my expertise, my experiences with eating disorders to anyone I could help. I struggled for 17 years with bulimia. So from high school to college to a career to a family to having kids, it was with me. So I understand, and my heart goes out to all those people who are handcuffed to an eating disorder, because it feels like a life sentence. And I want to do everything I can to walk with them through this journey hand in hand, and be able to help them get that mindset shift and the changes that need to happen inside of yourself, mind, body, and spirit, just have that align to overcome any eating disorders.
Right. Yeah, I love what you're passionate about. I love that you're being authentic and you're telling your story, because by telling your story, people that maybe are struggling in silence can find you as relatable and will reach out to you because, they're going to say, hey, this is my secret. How did you get through this? And I'm sure that that's what you specialize in, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head with secret, because it's such a secret. And, some eating disorders, binge eating disorder and bulimia are a little more secret. Anorexia is a little more obvious, but either way, it's a self-shaming disease that people don't, you don't think of it as a disease. You just think of it as a mental block, or people would tell me, well, just stop throwing up. It's like, it's not like that. Or to some of my clients, people have said, just start eating if with anorexia. It's like, no, it's not that easy, or everyone would do that. So just figuring out the blocks and the coping mechanisms and the triggers so that we can walk through it and really just get it out there in the open, because it's so freeing and releasing when you can share it with someone who's trustworthy and understands. It's a whole different ballgame.
Well, bless your heart. Reading about you, you're telling everybody, like, look, this is what happened. This is what I've been through, and you've made it through, and you're doing incredible. You're helping others. And based on what I know about you, it was a 17-year journey, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A journey is a good way to put it, because you just think, like, and in high school, you're like, oh, once I get to college, you just feel like you're going to grow out of it, and I've got mid 50-year-old clients who are struggling, and they have said, like, oh, I just feel like I'll grow out of it. It's like, well, you're 55 right now. Like, it's probably, you're not going to just grow out of it. We need to talk about some things and realign some things. So yeah, every case is different. So that's the I don't know what the word would be, but the uniqueness of it. And so that's kind of where I want to just meet people right where they're at, hear their story, hear their triggers, hear what is going on in their heart and in their minds, so I can meet them right there, and then we can go from there. So some people are farther down than others.
And not only do you work with individuals, but you're willing and able to be a speaker and speak to groups. Is that right?
Yep. MOPS groups or sports teams. For me, when I was in high school, a lot of things triggered back to my basketball days.
Mm.
And there was a lot of things that happened that triggered me to use my symptoms more when I was playing basketball. And it actually spiraled. I thought I was in control of things and that helped me, but actually it was a detriment to my playing time and to my abilities to actually be uh, a good figure on my basketball team. I probably would have played in college, but I wasn't in any mental capacity or
Mm.
physical capacity to do that. So
Now, you mentioned a great point about a trigger or a starting point. I don't know a lot about eating disorders, so for me, this was, one of the reasons why I was excited to have you on.
yeah,
But what I envision and what I think when I hear of an eating disorder, and I think of young individuals, girls or boys, but because I know for a fact that boys go through it with wrestling. They have all that pressure to weigh in at a certain weight, and that can create, an eating disorder without even realizing it. Because I've heard of, crazy things like spitting in a cup and doing these different things, but I can imagine the pressures on girls is probably as much or greater with sports teams and requirements and having to be, a certain way, or just the peer pressures. But what are some examples that you've seen or heard that is kind of like the start of an eating disorder at a teenage level?
um well, like you're right. So wrestling for boys, gymnastics for girls, dance classes for girls. I know for a fact that I know a gal who I'm working with who she was in dance, and luckily she was mature enough to realize it wasn't true, it wasn't suiting her well, it wasn't good for her, so she actually stopped dance because she felt the pressures that she was putting on herself to
Mm-hmm.
stay thin and to so that she could look the part and even feel like she could act the part. But in reality, even like cross country runners, they think the thinner that they are, the faster they're going to be. In
Mm-hmm.
reality, they need to fuel their bodies to go out and run daily, that do their practices daily and their meets on the weekends. And I mean, they need to fuel themselves, but they think that fueling themselves with food is going to be, they don't see food as energy. They just see the calories and the word fat, instead of, it's too bad that the word fat is an adjective or is a noun and a verb, like
Yeah.
to
Right.
be that, or it should just be, or I mean, not a verb, an adjective, but
Yeah.
um and it should just be like, you need fat, you need all kinds of different fats. So that was one thing that I definitely know, is that people steer clear from fats and carbohydrates and those kinds of things. So
Which is, I work with a lot of clients, and all of mine are over 18, but I do think that it is interesting that our country focuses on the food pyramid still. But the thing is there's a lack of education there. You're right. People right now with the diet fads and so forth
yeah,
like that, everybody sees carbs as bad, but carbs are the body's favored fuel source. So it is about eating the correct carbs, the correct amount at the correct time. And none of that education is done in the school level or at homes through the families. There's so much confusion and so much wrong information out there. And you're right, a lot of adults that I work with don't understand.
great.
So yeah, it's frustrating, and I wish that the education would shift and change, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. It's just these diet fads and these companies that are making so much money off of these wraps and creams and pills and supplements and so forth like that. But in all my clients know, I'll say food first, even though I am a Legionnaire and I love First Form products, but I will always tell you over and over again, food first. And I eat a lot. I eat all day long. in order to keep my leanness so I can compete. But there is so much misunderstanding about food, and you're right, food is fuel, and it really needs to be viewed that way. But all these fast food chains are showing fast food and cheap, and all this food is super cheap and fast and you can get it, but reality is we need to be eating quality food, a variety of food throughout the day, so we have a flood of different macro and micronutrients coming into our body. But we just don't know, and it's education. These young athletes could have incredible bodies and have an amazing amount of fuel if they knew what to eat, how much, and when.
Right.
So it breaks my heart to hear that. But it's all this marketing. You drive down the road, you got these billboards, and on social media, you've got all these beautiful pictures and, fast food on every corner. It's just so convenient and cheap and easy.
Yep.
That's where it goes.
Absolutely. And I mean, you look up the definition of calories and it's a unit of energy. It's not fat. It's not
It's not evil.
It's not evil. Yeah. We want energy, right? And yeah. So, and those fad diets, all of it is so bad for anybody, even if they don't necessarily have an eating disorder. It's about balance. It's about knowing the good fat from the bad fat, and that, that there isn't a bad food.
Right.
It's just, you just have to stay in moderation. And yeah, so yeah, I agree. That's a lot of good points.
Yeah. It is. It's education. It's knowing how the body functions, knowing the science, knowing, and a lot of it is learning how to prepare your foods and thinking ahead all the time. But, you brought up some valid points. And so, I know you mentioned MOPS. Can you explain what MOPS is?
Sure. It's Mothers of Preschoolers.
Okay.
So it's a national or international group that meets every other week or something like that. But yeah, it's moms, and a lot of times moms are struggling in silence because they're supposed to be this perfect. I was probably more ashamed of my eating disorder when I was a mom, because it didn't go away just because I was pregnant. Like, I knew that my babies needed energy, but in my mind I was able to justify it like, oh, the baby will get what they need, because that's what I was told. The baby will get what they need. It was just me not getting what I needed, and like, that was the start of moms putting kids first, right? Like, putting themselves on the back burner.
Right.
But yeah, so moms are really great, because typically if they're struggling in silence, they're at a place where they do want help. They don't want to, that was what shifted my desire to be in this eating disorder anymore. Was I looked at my kids and I was like, I want to be around for them. Because I had a heart palpitation that God placed in me, so that I would be able to look, or so I would be able to open my eyes and look around at what I was doing to my body. And so I looked at my kids and I was like, no, I'm done. This is it. This is so dumb. This is, at a point where I need to just take control of myself. And so that was where it started with me. So hence Recovered Hearts. Like, the heart was recovered is the end point where we want everyone to end up getting, and then the heart is where it needs to kind of start from.
So that was the change. That was the shift in your life when you had that heart palpitation.
Yep. And then I did some work because usually, almost always, an eating disorder goes back to like childhood. You don't just wake up one day and think you need, you want to have an eating disorder. It goes back to some mental, emotional scarring that happened in childhood that you just carried with you, and you're carrying it with you, and there's triggers out there that are bringing it back up, and then your coping mechanism is your eating disorder. So I had to kind of do some self digging on what was creating these triggers, and, where I would bring the eating disorder back into my life.
So my understanding of exactly what you're talking about is like that age range of like 3 to 5 right in there. So that must be why you do the MOPS. You like to work with those because you know that not only you can help and support the moms, but that age range is a huge influence on a person's entire life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say right around that 5-year-old age where things start really, that you're a sponge and things just really start soaking in and being part of your long-term memory.
Right.
Yeah.
So things that happen in that age area, oftentimes, like you said, it influence the rest of your life. And if something happens in that time frame that might develop into an eating disorder, it's good to look at that, go back to that, and possibly forgive or let things go. Is that correct?
Yeah, forgiveness is huge for forgiving other people and forgiving yourself. And so those are some exercises that I do with my clients too. And just thinking about how, as moms, when you're talking to your kids, not just daughters, but predominantly daughters, you don't want to focus on their looks, their outer looks. You want to focus on, if they're getting bigger, they're getting stronger. They're these strong girls. They're such kind-hearted. Don't get me wrong. I tell my daughter, "Oh, you're so pretty and you're so cute and I love you and you're so," and then I stick with kind and caring. The internal things that really matter.
Right.
So yeah, so we want to not always just focus on physical appearance and scrutinize things that don't really matter, like what they're wearing or, who cares what they're wearing.
I love that you mentioned that because, again, I work with adults and I always think or talk to them about how do you feel? What are you feeling inside? And so at the level that I work with, it's all about feeling better and having more energy and feeling good. And I'm thinking, at a young age, if they're being told, oh, you're so pretty, and, the extrinsic stuff, the exterior stuff, too hyper focused on that, it would be kind of, it is kind of interesting, to think, talking to a child, to say, well, how do you feel today? Do you have energy today? This food is, providing energy for you. Maybe that's just another concept that needs to be adopted or thought about. I look back as when my kids were that age, of course, they're much older now. They're 17 and 20. So I'm thinking, man, what did I say to my kids when they were 3 and 5? Like, I don't even remember what I said to them, but, I got to think on that and maybe ask them, it's like we're not given a manual of how to raise our kids. So, but it is really important to take a step back and think about. But one of the things that I noticed too, when working with adults like I do, a lot of times I mostly work with moms. And the moms usually will say, once they get into my program and once I've worked with them for a couple of weeks, they'll usually tell me that they're cooking 2 separate meals every night. And what they're doing is they're cooking, like macaroni and cheese and chicken nuggets for their kids and their family. And then they're feeding themselves, like a small portion of protein and some veggies and maybe some berries. That's their meal, but they're not feeding their kids that. They're feeding their kids, this boxed food, this processed food. And so I try to get them, and it takes time. Oftentimes when moms come to me and I start working with them, it's their desire to lose weight, feel better, have more energy, and have that sexy body back, or have their spouse look at them, like they used to look at them. But, they don't usually come to me and say, hey, I want to, have my whole family eat healthy, or sometimes that does come up, but they always shift to cooking 2 separate meals because they're the ones that are making the choice to shift to a healthy lifestyle, and they don't want to do that to their family. But honestly, here's how I did it. I slowly shifted my family into eating healthy, meaning I would cook the lean proteins every night and I would have the veggies, and then I would do just the boxed macaroni on the side. And they all serve their own plates. Like I have never ever served their own foods except for when, they couldn't when they were little. But,
Right.
I just shifted it just a little bit, like half healthy and then one serving of something boxed or processed. And then they started asking me questions because my plate didn't have that macaroni and cheese on it. And so I was like, well, it's processed food. It doesn't make me feel good. It hurts my tummy. And so I, really focused on the feelings inside instead of well, it makes me look fat. I didn't talk about the extrinsic stuff. I talked about how it made me feel.
Right.
And so slowly my kids, and they were, 7 and 9. So they, were curious. But yet, I continued to do that for about 2 years. And finally, I noticed that I'm starting to throw away more and more macaroni and cheese, for instance, and they weren't wanting the processed foods because they did shift to, this does hurt my stomach, or, mom looks great and mom's not eating these things or whatever. Now that's back to, the extrinsic, not the intrinsic, but it's just a shift, shifting our way of eating, way of cooking for our family, and having the foods available in the household that is healthy, I think.
Yep, absolutely. And I don't think there's definitely too many moms that I know who are on diets, and their kids are seeing that and gearing it around weight loss. And while, yes, those particular people could stand to lose some weight, it's not about the health shift. So yeah, I completely agree that we need to make sure that we're modeling for our kids the reasons that we're making these shifts, and yes, the intrinsic about it, the internal feelings, the gut health, and balance, the macaroni and cheese. I serve my kids macaroni and cheese once every other week or so, on a Friday night when I know that my husband and I are going to have like pizza or something, like you can still have those foods. It's just kind of like an 80-20 type of idea. And yeah, my kids have never been picky, so I guess I'm lucky in that. We make one meal. They eat it. And if they, don't love it, they still, too bad that, they still eat it. So.
Well, I'm lucky. My kids are older, so if you don't like it, there's a kitchen, But
Yeah.
my kids are not picky at all. But the bad part about it is they are so open to foods and they love food so much that it's like, hey, let's go out to eat. Guess where they want to go? They want to go to sushi. They don't want to go to McDonald's. They don't want to go to pizza. They want to go get the $150 meal. And I'm like, so there's the downside to having not picky kids.
Yeah.
But we eat a lot. My kids, I love this topic. I love that we're talking about, the family dynamic and where we are in our country. And I love the point that you made where the moms are on a diet and they can only picture, and I don't teach dieting, I teach a healthy lifestyle. And I actually had somebody tell me last week, they're like, I don't understand what that means. I'm like, well, a healthy lifestyle is not just the food you eat, it's the water, it's the stress level, it's the amount of sleep you get, it's the amount of stress that you have. Are you taking self-care actions every single day, doing stuff for you? Are you putting yourself first, not in a selfish way? But there's just so much to it. In your environment too. Is it clean? Are you mold free? Do you have natural products in your home? I mean, it's so much deeper than just, eating a certain way. It's I don't teach dieting. Dieting is temporary. Dieting is restrictive. It's deprivation. It's miserable. And I can only imagine that these moms are saying things, out loud to their 3 to 5 year old saying, I can't, I'm not going to eat that because it's going to make me look fat. Well, the kids are hearing that.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And they hear it, they take it in. And while maybe a 9-year-old won't change their eating right now, some of them will. There are eating disorders out there as young as 8-9 years old that starting then. So some of them will internalize that and go and just take it and run with it. And and some of them, it'll take a few years for them to get into that social aspect,
Mm.
which is harder these days, with all the social media. When we were younger, like, it was just billboards and magazines, but now it's like everywhere. And so it's really hard. And it seems like it's one extreme or another. Like, either they're obese kids, because child obesity is so up too. It's
Yeah.
really prevalent around the United States, and then, or else, anorexia. It's like, let's just teach healthy and balanced, and not put so much focus on food, but food as a fuel, not as a
Yeah.
tool to. Wow, I just rhymed. Food as a fuel, not as a tool, for emotions.
Yeah. Another thing I teach my clients too is to don't use food as a reward. Don't use food to, um, take off from a bad day. Let's say, you have a bad day at work, or you have, something happens, and then you just want to go eat a tub of ice cream. Find something else. Go do a jigsaw puzzle. Go to the gym and run on the treadmill and take it out on that treadmill, or just go for a walk, or go take a bath, or there's just such a huge list of things that you can do to wash away the stress of the day that doesn't have to do with food. And I can only imagine moms, again, saying, oh, I had a terrible day, oh my gosh, I'm going to drink a glass of wine. That's not showing a good representation either. But yeah, I mean, it's so funny, you think, like I said earlier, I got to look back at how I raised my kids. And I mean, I'm really lucky. My girls are amazing. They're incredible. Yeah, they're extremely strong and terribly curious. And, they go to the gym with me and work out with me. And I've had moms come up to me in the locker room and say, how did you do that? How did you get your kids to come work out with you? And, my story is they're like butterflies. I tell you what, when they first started, they were tapping on my shoulder and curious. But every time I'd reach over and say, no, don't do it like that, do it like this. And poof, they're like a butterfly and they fly away, So it's just being a great example and keeping the door open and saying, hey, I'm going to the gym. Anybody want to go with me? And for 18 months, or maybe even a little bit longer, they said, no, weren't interested. But, about year 2-ish or a little under, they started coming around, they started coming with me, and then they were acting curious and showing me stuff on Instagram. Hey, can we try this? And so it is interesting, and I don't know how I did it, but I'm really lucky.
Yeah.
Have some incredible children, and but yeah, very good.
Yeah, the point that you made about your clients who, the going to grab a tub of ice cream rather than go for a walk or whatever, that's usually that having a bad day, or those kinds of things, those are the triggers that, if they can't not go get the tub of ice cream or the bag of chips or whatever it might be, that is where you can kind of see, okay, you have more issues than just self-control. It's stemming from something deeper. So those are the people who need a little more help. And that's kind of where I've been able to step in with several people in the binge eating side of things, kind of get to the bottom of that.
So how does somebody get a hold of you that's,
Yeah,
silently suffering?
Yeah, well, I do have a Facebook page, Recovered Hearts Facebook page, and I also have a website. So, and we put those in the comments or whatever.
Yeah.
Post those. So it's www.recoveredhearts.com. Pretty simple. And then on that website, there'll be my phone number and my email, just to start a conversation. My true desire is just to meet people right where they're at, have a conversation and see if we would be a good fit to continue, further coaching.
Beautiful. And you'll
Yeah.
work with anybody anywhere in the country, right? Because you're
Yeah.
going to talk to them on Zoom or just on the phone or whatever way they prefer, I'm assuming.
Yep, exactly. I've done a lot of Zooming, but some people prefer a phone call, and that's fine too.
Yeah,
But I like the face-to-face like this. So, yeah.
right, right. But you're open to either.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whichever they prefer.
Yeah. Because especially if they're, ashamed or afraid or whatever, maybe they, would prefer just a phone call. I know my clients are the same way, each one likes to communicate differently. And so I try to be somewhat flexible. I do like phone calls just because then that allows me to work in my pajamas.
Yeah. Well, I definitely have done Zoom calls in sweatshirts and stuff.
Yeah.
It's all about comfort. So, yeah, but yeah, I'm excited to see if I can help anyone from anywhere around the United States.
Well, you have a huge heart, and I love that you're so authentic. I love that you're putting your story out there because you are relatable. And, I hope that this video helps more than one person, and I know it will. I know that they're going to reach out to you and come out of the silence and get your help. And you just, yeah, I met you a while back, and I've just enjoyed every moment that we've spent together. So,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I just want people to know it's not a life sentence. It
mhm,
feels like it. I know it feels like it, but it's not.
mhm,
So
very
just help.
good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Allison, for doing this podcast with me. And maybe we'll do more in the future. I think this is great. This is an awesome topic that, really we need to get it out there. We need to talk more about it. We talked about a lot of different aspects, that it does cross over on to, the people that I work with as well. I usually work with mostly moms and that are stressed out, overwhelmed, and trying to figure it all out, but yet don't feel good, don't have energy. And so I feel like we're really aligned with one another. And if I come across somebody that's, dealing with the more the eating disorder area, then I definitely will involve you. So thank you so
Thank
much.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. See
Okay.
you later.
Bye.
Bye.